Hi, I have had a couple of requests for a behind the scenes video explaining my gear and process for making my playing everything videos, so here we go. The whole process starts with a guide track. Usually I can find a suitable MIDI file in this collection that I bought years ago. If the song's newer than that, I can usually find one on the internet, or failing that, I can make my own from scratch. The quality of the file doesn't really matter because I won't be using any of the MIDI from it. I'm just chopping it up to build my own arrangement. I make all the major changes using my Yamaha QY700 here, and then I take the file back to the PC and use MuseScore to write out specific parts. This usually includes the vocal harmonies. In this case, I'll be using the bass part as a guide and reading the guitar parts too. You can tell when I'm reading on video because my glasses are on. Those parts go out as PDFs to my iPad so I can stick them up, hopefully out of shot next to the camera. I run the finished arrangement down to a standard MIDI file again, export it back to the QY700 and add a click track so that I can play the drums in as MIDI data. There are several ways I could do the drums. I could record the audio directly from the kit. That sounds pretty good, but it would make one pre-mixed waveform. Recording the drums as MIDI data allows me to separate the drum tracks in the sequencer, do any minor tweaks and quantizing, and then run them down as audio tracks to the PC so that I can mix them separately. The drum sounds on the Roland kit are good, but the brain on my kit doesn't have a MIDI input, so I can't send the data back this way. The drum sounds on the QY700 are not great, so I run the edited tracks down one at a time through the Boss DR880. I make my click track here using a song pattern I made for the sequencer, and then I copy the first bar over to the next track here, so that when I run each track down to audio, I get this clapperboard click that helps me sync everything back up in the audio editor. This is Ableton Live 10, which I could and should be using for everything, but I'm only partway through a course to teach me how. Instead, I'm still running into Cool Edit Pro 2, which I've had for about 20 years. I believe this software was bought by Adobe and turned into Audition, but I prefer the original. Sometimes it crashes if I run too many effects at the same time, but it generally works okay. Now that I've got the guide track set up, it's time to record the live instruments and vocals. Guitars and keys I can do anytime because they feed directly into the mixer. Vocals and anything I'm recording with a mic has to wait until I get some quiet in here. That includes turning off the AC, so recording vocals can be a hot job. I've done a little bit of sound damping in here with these modular thingies from IKEA. I think they're intended for windows, but I needed to soften the corners of the room to reduce early reflections, and they've done the job pretty well. The walls are a bit hard, and I'd like to perhaps add a big curtain at some point to really hold it down. So onto the live instruments. Over here we've got the camera set up with our new light ring, iPad score or cheat sheet set up out of shot if possible. The guitar and bass are going through simple patches on my trusty and ancient zoom pedals. I have my wireless mouse to run the computer from a distance, and everything comes back to me through my headphones. I put a clap at the start of each live track like I did with the MIDI guide. This isn't necessary for the audio, but it helps me line up the videos later. So now we've got the raw audio and video. The editing process begins. This is mostly about coffee and swearing. I mix the audio first, using my ancient software. Labeling and colouring the tracks may seem trivial, but it really helps to keep track of things in the editing process. With the basic mix done, I have a listen and then go back and mix it again. And again, until either I'm happy or the coffee runs out, at which point it's time for the video editing, which is a whole new level of swearing. My main video editor is Sony Vegas, which came with my camera, so it can handle files straight from the SD card. But when I'm running in 10 channels, it tends to get a bit overwhelmed, so I find it helps to convert everything to MP4 first using AVC. Lunch break while that's happening. I can cut the display portion of each clip with crop and position and move it around the screen using track motion, although I don't move them around very often. I usually boost the contrast on all of my clips and give each one a tint to make the whole screen a bit more colourful. At this point, I sometimes spot something wrong with the audio mix, and that's fine. I can go back into Cool Edit, mix it down again, and import the new version to the same place in the video mix. I found that the MP4 compression from Vegas isn't great, so normally I render everything as AVI, which takes a while, and then quickly convert it to MP4 in AVC to get it down to a reasonable size. YouTube has its own compression routine on top of that, so what you're seeing here has been squashed and squished in a couple of different ways. I hope this video has been informative and enjoyable, and there wasn't too much useless jargon for you. Please feel free to post questions in the comments and subscribe to my channel for more Playing Everything videos.